Someone erased a woman from American history. Not buried, not mourned, erased. In 1826, 3 weeks before Thomas Jefferson died, a sealed letter arrived at Monticello. It was not recorded in the estate inventory. It was not logged by clerks. It never reached the archives. Yet fragments of it survived. The paper was thin, imported linen. The ink was brown with iron rot. And the handwriting, tight, trembling, unmistakably feminine, was not that of a slave. It was his wife's. Martha Jefferson was supposed to have died decades earlier. That is what the textbooks say. That is what the memorials insist. But this letter was written after her recorded death, and it contained one sentence so disturbing that the household chaplain later refused communion for the rest of his life. The sentence was simple. I know what you have done to her, and I know what you intend to do with me. That letter vanished within 48 hours. So did everyone who read it. What follows is not a romance. It is not gossip. It is not revisionist fantasy. It is a story about power, silence, and how early America learned to make women disappear without blood. Monticello is described as a home. It was not. It was a machine built on precision. Corridors that curved so footsteps echoed but faces did not. Staircases hidden inside walls. Doors that closed without handles. Jefferson designed Monticello to observe without being seen. The enslaved women who worked inside called it the watching house. Every night, candles burned in windows that no one slept behind. Bells rang without being pulled. And certain rooms, especially the south wing, were forbidden after sunset. This is where the girl lived. Her name has been changed in every record that mentions her. Sometimes she is called Sally, sometimes Sarah, sometimes nothing at all. But in church burial lists from Albemarle County, a midwife recorded a single line. Colored woman, 18, with child, property of the house. The pregnancy was not unusual. The secrecy was. Jefferson did not hide his papers. He hid people. And when Martha began to suspect, the house began to change. Martha Jefferson had learned a skill that wives of powerful men often develop. She learned to listen without reacting. At first, it was small things. The servants no longer met her eyes. The night nurse began sleeping in the hallway. The girl from the south wing stopped attending church. Then Martha found the ribbon. It was pale blue, French silk, not something a slave could legally own. It was folded inside Jefferson's personal prayer book. That night, Martha did not confront him. She prayed, and something answered. Church records describe her requesting confession 3 nights in a row, asking the same question each time. Is it a sin to witness evil and remain alive? The priest could not answer. Neither could God. So Martha did what women in her position were trained to do. She gathered proof. Martha waited until dawn. She went to the south wing alone. The girl was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, hands folded over her stomach as if holding herself together. She did not look up. Martha spoke gently, then firmly, then desperately. The girl said only one thing. He says the child belongs to the future. That phrase appears nowhere else in Jefferson's writings. But it appears 3 times in private letters later destroyed by fire. Martha reached for the girl's hand. The girl recoiled, not in fear, but in warning. She whispered, "You must leave before the church comes." That was the moment Martha understood. This was not about adultery. This was about inheritance, bloodlines, and a nation terrified of its own contradictions. And Martha Jefferson, First Lady in everything but name, had just become expendable. On the 3rd Sunday of Lent, 1811, the congregation at St. Anne's Church gathered as they always had. The pews were filled with landowners, widows, enslaved servants standing at the back, heads lowered. The air smelled of damp wool and candle grease. The Bible lay open on the altar, but the sermon never came. Reverend Isaac Weatherby stood frozen, fingers pressed into the pulpit so hard they left dents in the wood. His prepared pages trembled. Several witnesses later said his lips moved, but no sound emerged. Finally, he closed the Bible and said only this: "There are sins God forgives and sins God records." Then he dismissed the congregation. No hymns, no prayers, no blessing. That afternoon, Weatherby rode to Monticello without invitation. And by sunset, Martha Jefferson's name vanished from the church ledger where births and deaths were recorded. Not crossed out, removed, as if she had never existed. Church records are meant to be permanent. Ink on vellum, God's memory on earth. But in Albemarle County, something unusual appears between 1809 and 1813. 7 baptisms, all infants, all listed as father, unknown, all marked with the same strange notation in the margin. Held in trust. 1 baptism stands apart. The child is listed as born to an enslaved woman from Monticello. No mother's name, no father's name, no godparents. Only 1 line, written in a different hand. This child must not be buried where it can be found. That line is signed not by a priest, but by a trustee. The same trustee who managed Jefferson's private estate. The church knew. The church had always known. And when Martha began asking questions, the church prepared to contain her. There is a room behind the altar at St. Anne's that does not appear on any architectural plan. It is narrow, windowless, stone floor worn smooth by knees. Local legend calls it the listening room. Confessions were not absolved there. They were evaluated. Martha was brought there on a Tuesday evening, escorted by 2 women from the Ladies' Benevolent Society, wives trained to restrain other wives without leaving marks. The door closed. The priest asked no questions about Jefferson. Instead, he asked Martha something else. "Do you believe a nation can be born sinful?" Martha said yes. Then he asked, "Do you believe some women are chosen to carry that sin in silence?" Martha did not answer. That was when they told her about the girl's pregnancy. Not with outrage, not with shame, but with planning. They spoke of lineage, of balance, of preventing disorder. They told her the child could not be free, could not be enslaved, could not be acknowledged. The solution, they said, was separation. And Martha Jefferson was the variable that could be removed with the least resistance. Church bells are rung by hands. Except that night. At precisely midnight, every bell in Charlottesville rang at once. No rope was pulled. No sexton present. Dogs howled. Horses panicked. Candles went out as if blown by a breath too large to see. At Monticello, Jefferson remained in his study. Martha was not in her room. Servants later testified that they saw her walking toward the carriage path, wearing a plain cloak, no shoes. Behind her walked Reverend Weatherby. Ahead of her walked no one. The bells rang for exactly 3 minutes. Then stopped. No funeral followed. No death notice. Only a private entry in Jefferson's account book. Expense incurred. Matter resolved. Martha Jefferson was not buried. She was not imprisoned. She was relocated. There were places in early America designed for women who disrupted order. Quiet homes, religious retreats, charitable institutions, places where names were changed. Hair was cut. Letters were never sent. One such place appears in state funding records only once. A female moral recovery house, established in 1811, closed in 1812. No patient lists survive, but a laundress's diary does. She writes, "One woman cries at night, not like grief, like warning. She says the child will return." The diary ends abruptly. The house burned down 3 weeks later. No bodies were found. From that year forward, Jefferson's letters change. They grow colder, shorter, mechanized. He writes obsessively about legacy, about how history must be shaped like marble, chips removed, flaws concealed. He never writes Martha's name again. Not once. Not even in death. Because to name her would be to admit she was real. And admitting that would unravel everything. The child was born in secret. The mother survived, but was never the same. And somewhere beyond Monticello, a woman who had once been First Lady of the Mind learned what America would perfect over centuries. If you cannot kill the truth, you bury the witness alive. The birth did not happen at Monticello. That much is certain. There are no midwife payments in the plantation ledger, no linen requisitions, no record of infant death, which was common and carefully tracked. Instead, there is a single unexplained expense labeled transport night. The girl was taken before dawn. She was not crying. Multiple accounts later describe her as calm to the point of terror, as if she understood something the adults did not. She was brought to a hunting lodge 30 miles west, a place Jefferson once described as adequate for silence. The midwife was sworn to secrecy under threat of eternal damnation, not law. And when the child was born, the midwife made the sign of the cross and refused to cut the cord. She said the infant did not cry. She said the infant stared. In early America, enslaved children were property. But this child was different. No bill of sale exists. No ownership transfer. No valuation. Instead, a symbol appears repeatedly in Jefferson's private cipher notebooks. A small triangle enclosing an eye. Not Masonic. Not Christian. The symbol appears next to land parcels, trusts, and one name written only once. The future. The child was raised in movement. Never in one place. Never long enough to be remembered. Each caretaker received the same instruction. Teach obedience. Do not teach belonging. The girl grew quickly. Too quickly, some said. By age 6, she could read scripture aloud, though no one had taught her. By age 9, she corrected ministers. By age 12, she began asking questions no one could answer without revealing too much. So they stopped answering and began preparing. The enslaved woman, her real name lost, was permitted to see the child once per year. Always supervised. Always brief. She was warned never to claim motherhood. The child was instructed never to call her mother. Instead, they used a word found in missionary journals. Vessel. The woman aged rapidly. Her hair turned white before 40. She was known to speak to walls, to whisper apologies to empty rooms. Once, she tried to keep the child. The attempt lasted less than an hour. After that, her tongue was burned with lye. She never spoke again. But she watched. And watching was enough. In the last decade of his life, Jefferson withdrew. Visitors described him as distracted, often staring past people as if listening to someone behind them. He commissioned locks that could only be opened from the inside. He rewrote his will 6 times. Each revision included a trust that never activated. A trust waiting for someone. In his final months, he wrote a sentence over and over again on scrap paper. A nation cannot survive divided blood. On July 4, 1826, Jefferson died, but not before giving one last instruction to his executor. Ensure the girl reaches the house. The executor did not ask which house. He already knew. The house was not a home. It was an institution. Located on land jointly owned by the church and the state, it served as a school, orphanage, and moral correction facility, depending on who was asking. Children entered. Names did not leave. The girl arrived at 14. She was listed as Margaret F. No last name. No race. Just one note in red ink. Do not release. She was kept apart from the others. Her lessons were different. History without dates. Scripture without mercy. Civics without choice. They taught her what America was. Then they taught her what America required. In the house's financial ledger, a single page is torn out. But the reverse side remains. On it is written a prophecy, not biblical, but administrative. She will reconcile what cannot be reconciled. She will belong nowhere. She will be called many things, but never daughter. When she leaves, the country will change its language. Within 5 years of her arrival, new legal terms begin appearing in state documents. Words like one drop, classification, removal. The girl was not allowed to die, because she was never meant to live as a person. She was meant to live as a solution. Laws do not begin as laws. They begin as exceptions. After the girl entered the house, something subtle began to shift in the surrounding counties. Court records changed tone. Language hardened. Ambiguity vanished. Judges stopped asking who someone was. They began asking what someone was. In 1830, a case appears involving a woman described only as of uncertain condition. The court ruled not on evidence, but on containment. The ruling stated, when identity threatens order, the state may assign one. That sentence would be quoted for decades. The girl was never mentioned. She didn't need to be. She had already become an invisible reference point, an unnamed foundation upon which certainty could be built. And certainty, once institutionalized, spreads quickly. Every system leaks. At the house, it leaked through the cleaning woman. Her name was Ruth Bell. She could not read. She could not write. But she remembered faces. Ruth noticed the girl because the girl never slept. Every night, she sat upright, eyes open, hands folded. Not praying. Waiting. Ruth began bringing her extra bread. Extra blankets. One night, Ruth whispered, "What are you waiting for, child?" The girl answered without turning her head. For them to finish building what they started. Ruth later testified, before her testimony was struck, that the girl spoke of Martha Jefferson as if she had known her. She called her the first silence. That was the night Ruth disappeared. Her belongings remained. Her name was removed from payroll. No inquiry followed. The house continued uninterrupted. By the 1840s, the country's language had changed. People were no longer enslaved. They were classified. Families were no longer separated. They were reassigned. Women were no longer silenced. They were protected from hysteria. Each term created distance. Each distance created permission. Inside the house, the girl was given books, not novels, not poetry, but legal drafts and church decrees. She was taught to recognize patterns, to see how words could erase entire lives without ever spilling blood. She was told this was progress. She did not argue. She memorized. And when she finished reading everything they gave her, she asked for one thing: a map. They refused. In 1849, the house caught fire. Or rather, one room did. The west wing burned from the inside out. No accelerant was found. No lightning strike recorded. The fire stopped at the girl's door. Everything behind it remained untouched. When authorities entered, they found her sitting calmly on the bed, the ledger beside her, open. On the final page, she had written a single sentence in a careful, practiced hand: "You cannot erase what remembers itself." The house closed 3 months later, officially due to funding, unofficially because no one could agree on what to do with her next. The girl, now a woman, was released at 37. No papers, no name, no money, only instructions. She was told where she could not live, where she could not work, what she could not claim. America had been built carefully enough that she no longer needed walls. The world itself had become her enclosure. Witnesses across 3 states later describe a woman who asked unusual questions at town halls and churches. Questions like, who decides which children belong to the future? How many silences make a law? She was never arrested. She was never acknowledged. And slowly, she vanished into the structure she had helped define. By 1900, the story had dissolved completely. Martha Jefferson was a footnote. The girl was nothing. The system was everything. But systems leave artifacts. A torn ledger, a burned building, a sentence that doesn't quite fit. Historians would later notice something strange. The language of American control, its obsession with blood, order, and classification, did not evolve gradually. It appeared fully formed, as if practiced first on someone small enough to erase. By the late 19th century, the woman who had once been the child at Monticello walked through towns as a ghost of memory. She carried no documents. She answered to no name. She had become a living ledger of what America preferred to forget. People noticed her occasionally. A teacher in Virginia swore she corrected the dates in a history lesson before vanishing down a side street. A preacher in North Carolina claimed she recited scripture in a voice that made him doubt his own pulpit. A seamstress in Maryland said she whispered instructions to children, then disappeared behind closed shutters. She left no footprints, no trace, only the sense that the past was alive and watching. In 1892, nearly 80 years after Martha Jefferson's disappearance, a letter surfaced in a private collection. Its edges were frayed. The ink had bled with age. Yet the handwriting was unmistakable, Martha's. The first line read, "I have learned how a nation buries truth. I write to warn you, not for hope, but to survive." The remainder of the letter was missing. But collectors swear that the phrase "the child belongs to the future" was repeated in the margin, faintly, as if written by a trembling hand. No one traced its origin. No one revealed its recipient. The message remained, like smoke rising from ashes that refused to settle. The house may have closed. Monticello may have crumbled. The people may have died. Yet the structure built from that first silence, the careful orchestration of who may speak and who may not, remains. In public records, in law, in memory, every time a child is labeled, a family is divided, a secret is concealed for the greater good, the echoes return. You can see it in census lines, court rulings, and church registers. And sometimes, late at night, in the corner of a library or archive, a page will tremble, as if reminding someone, "Do you remember what we buried?" The woman of the future was never found again. Her existence became a cautionary whisper in private diaries and unpublished letters. She became the invisible teacher of the nation's obsession with classification, inheritance, and control. Every law, every ledger, every policy designed to erase an inconvenient truth is a reflection of her life. Hidden, observed, never acknowledged. Her legacy is the silence that shapes society, and that silence still waits in plain sight. St. Anne's Church still stands. The room behind the altar is empty. The pulpit is polished. Candles burn. Hymns are sung. But no one remembers the listening room. No one remembers the sermons never delivered. No one remembers the bells that rang without hands. Except in the faintest margin notes of aged manuscripts, scribbles historians dismiss as illegible doodles. Those who notice them feel a shiver. It is the first whisper of Martha Jefferson, the first echo of the girl, the first warning that some disappearances are not endings. They are the foundation of everything that comes after. Every child today is unknowingly shaped by that single erased life. The lesson was clear. If history is controlled, if witnesses are removed, if truth is silenced, a nation can shape reality without ever lifting a hand. And sometimes, the erased return, not as people, but as structure, law, and memory. The woman of Monticello still exists in this way. Not visible, not named, not acknowledged, but felt in every act of concealment, every decision made in fear, every child assigned a place in the ledger of society. If you have watched this far, it is not coincidence. You are holding a record of a life that was never meant to be recorded. You are holding the echo of a woman, a child, and a family erased to serve a nation's order. She warns, look carefully at what is buried. Learn the signs. Remember the names no one speaks. And then, as quietly as she appeared, she vanishes again. History remembers some. It hides others. It builds a world on their silence. Martha Jefferson, the girl from Monticello, the house that contained her. They are all forgotten files. And some of those files, if you look closely, still wait in the shadows, waiting for the eyes that dare to see, waiting for the voices brave enough to speak, waiting for you.